inform you that we will start at 17 Indonesian time, and of course for all of you who still at the foyer area, we would like to invite you to come in at the ballroom and please have a seat in the front row first. So once again, for the C20 Policy Dialogue member who are still in the foyer area, we would like to invite you to come and join us to the ballroom, and please fill in the first line of the place so we can start on time at 17 Indonesian time. Thank you. All right, everyone. Good afternoon, distinguished guests. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, good morning or good evening for all the participants who coming attend this event virtually from over the world. And once again, welcome to the second day of C20 Policy Dialogue. Can I hear the spirit for the second day of our special event? I know it's some familiar faces, still faithful from the day one. And of course, I just want to say hi and welcome back to all participants who attend this event virtually from all over the world. Welcome back to the second day, and of course, feel free to open your camera and then maybe you can say hi or you just wave your hand to the camera. So, although we are connected through the virtual, we can have some energy. And of course, still greeting you from the beautiful place in Jakarta from Le Meridian Hotel, and still with me, Maria Christie, to be your master of ceremony. So, for being the opening for our special event for today, let me say hi to the first one, Excellency Mr. Edi Priyo Pambudi as a co-Sherpa of the G20 Indonesia. Good afternoon and welcome, sir. Hello. And of course, welcome to Excellency Ambassadors of the G20 countries. Good. Welcome, everyone. All right, next one, Excellency, the chairs, co-chairs, and representative of the G20 Working Group. Once again, welcome and good afternoon. And of course, distinguished chairs, co-chairs, Sherpa, and Sous-Sherpa of C20 Indonesia. Next one, distinguished C20 Steering Committee, International Advisory Committee, Troika, Working Group Coordinators, and members from all around the world. Hi guys, welcome. And of course, the co-chairs of the G20 Engagement Group. And I just want to say hi to the fellow journalists and colleagues in media. I can see right there, there is a C today for Southeast Asia. Hi everyone, welcome. And of course, once again, welcome to all the participants who attend this event offline at here, Le Meridian Hotel, Jakarta. Boleh kita berikan tepuk tangan untuk acara kita sore hari ini? Dan tentunya Bapak Ibu sekalian, ladies and gentlemen, we know that this is the second day and of course, still same with the first day. This event is being relayed on Zoom and live from YouTube C20. And of course, the whole program will be delivered in English and will be interpreted into Bahasa Indonesia. So for all of you, the participants who joining us virtually, please be note that we have provided the interpretation feature on Zoom. The way to system, you may click the button on your screen located at the bottom right side with a globe symbol titled Interpretation. Once again, you can click the button on your screen located at the bottom right side with a globe symbol titled Interpretation. And of course, you can choose Bahasa Indonesia and you will deliver it and you will hear the translation in Bahasa Indonesia. So ladies and gentlemen, we know that all the chairs and leaders of the Civil Society 20 Indonesia and all members of the civil society organization around the world who are here with us today, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to gather both physically and virtually to witness the biggest milestone for civil society advocacy and engagement with the G20 leaders in 2022. So yesterday, at the first day of our event, the C20 had a productive bilateral dialogue with the G20 Working Group as a part of the civil society's advocacy work in the G20 process. And right now, we just start our event with a special talk show, and without further ado, to hear the fruitful result of the policy dialogue, I would like to pass over the stage to the moderator for today. So please welcome Mr. Arjun Philip as an International Advisory Committee of the C20 Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arjun Phillips.
Thank you everyone for joining for this another productive session that we are having for the C20 this second day. On behalf of the leadership of the C20, the Steering Committee, the International Advisory Committee, and the Troika, I welcome you all. As you know, the process of the dialogues yesterday was involved with having representation from the G20 Working Groups, where each working group from the C20 interacted with them. The aim of today's session is structured differently. We have in our midst Mr. Eddie Priyo Pambudi, co-Sherpa of the G20, who is here. Please, can we have a round of applause from him? Who is here in our midst, who will actually hear the responses of the working groups and then accordingly give his response as to what the planning for the G20 2022 Indonesia presidency will be. For this, I would like to call on stage Mafutan, Sherpa of the C20, to join me on this stage. Please, if you can, please. And Mr. Eddie Priyo Pambudi, co-Sherpa of the G20. Please, sir, if we can have you on the stage. As for now, we will have 2 minutes for each working groups to present the summary of their conversations yesterday. I would be a very strict moderator, so I would please invite you to limit yourself as much as we can, because we have to hear the response of Mr. Eddie later on. So for the start, I would ask the Vaccines Access and Global Health Working Group to please come up on the podium. Agung Prakaso. Mr. Agung.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all of you participants of C20 Policy Dialogue. My name is Agung Prakoso, representing the Vaccine Access and Global Health Working Groups, C20 from Indonesia for Global Justice as coordinators. So I will inform the results of our discussion around this last night discussion with our counterparts from G20 Health Working Groups, represented by Pak Bonanza Perwira-Tarihitu and also Professor Laksono as representing the Indonesia Ministry of Health. We're so glad that we have some point of view from G20 Health Working Groups. We have the same areas with the G20 Health Working Groups, especially in expanding access to COVID-19 commodities and also in inclusive global health architecture, strengthening the global health ecosystem, and also in achieving universal health coverage. We have some point about the main challenging in the G20 process. It's around the challenging in manufacturing on how we can produce the vaccine by conducting research and development, and also reach the IP issues, IP barriers, to reach out the developed countries and also private sector that they have. And also, we note that G20 now is trying to find the best governance of the fifth to make sure the accountability and transparency on the fifth. As the Civil 20, we give some our recommendation related to this. C20, we have a lot of recommendation. We put it on our statement in every health minister meeting and also health working groups meeting. But for the last night discussion, we note some point that is most important for us. The first is Civil 20 push to put health tools and countermeasure as global public goods. And it must be free of IP restriction, because we want to address the equality of vaccine access, diagnostic, and therapeutics. The manufacturing capacity need to be bolstered through the open sharing of research data, knowledge, and technology. C20 push the G20 countries to not using any dispute settlement to each G20 countries if there are G20 countries try to produce vaccine diagnostic and therapeutics. And for the financing issue, C20 remind the representation of decision making in FIF must be set up, co-created and grounded in equality, inclusion, with strong representative from LICs and LMICs and civil society from Global South. Formal accountability and transparency mechanism must be built into the government of structure and particularly engagement. That's all our discussion. Our discussion last night with G20. We also hope that this is not the last time we will have discussion with our counterpart in G20. Thank you.
Thank you, Agung. Thank you for that very concise presentation. Next up, I would invite the Environmental, Climate, Justice and Energy Transition Working Group, Ms. Lisa Vijayani.
Good evening, good day, everyone. My name is Lisa Vijayani. I'm the coordinator of the ECE Working Group of C20. So we had a productive discussion last night, even though the representative from the G20 government, the Energy Transition Working Group, and the Environment Deputy Meeting and Climate Sustainability was not there. Unfortunately, they had another meeting that we had, contacted before, but we have conveyed our policy briefs and also our recommendation to them. But aside from that, we have the participation from all our working group members, and we are also very delighted to have the representatives from the coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs, PAP, that also follow our discussion every time we have a meeting. As an outcome of our discussion last night, we come up with the actually the point of view that we have to enforce in the coming weeks to the G20 leaders, the issue of justice, the issue of the local communities that should be underlined in terms of the issue of climate change, environmental sustainability, and also energy transition. And in the coming weeks, we'll also have a public discussion to have a productive discussion with the Energy Transition Working Group in terms of the issue of energy security that is nowadays very much crucial for us to be discussed with the G20. There is another recommendation that we really have to focus on, which is focusing on the issue of climate adaptation, that actually we still have to work on that in the next few weeks or so, because unfortunately at that discussion last night, our sub-working group coordinator was having a COVID, so couldn't attend. But that's our inputs that I think we will have to work on it together. But overall, as a coordinator of this working group, I was very happy to have so many inputs from our members, not only from the Asian countries. We had participants from the country like Pacific Islands countries, from the Antigua and Barbados country, from the European countries, and also from the American countries, that they share their inputs towards our recommendations. So I think that's all from me as the representative of the ECE working group. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that very short, concise presentation. Next up, we have the Gender Equality and Disability Working Group, and may I invite Justin Geletic.
Good morning, good afternoon, and hello everyone. I will read our result from our discussion with our counterparts last night. From Gender Equality and Disability Working Group. So the counterparts that were attended last night are from G20 Empower. This is Ibu Eko Novi Arianti, and then also Ibu Nita. Ibu Eko Novi is a representative from the government representative from the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and Child Protection. And then our discussion, there is a positive response for the 3-hour priority issues, in particularly about GETC or gender equality, disability, and social inclusion. But actually, the G20 Empower, they are focused to care economy, women and SME, and digital economy. And then even though the GETC isn't there specified in their policy paper or there are issues, but the response is they will, actually this issue it's already mentioned by their chair and co-chair, and then they would like to propose the GETC issue to be discussed next year. I mean, like for the next G20 presidency in India. And then responses also, the common or priority issues with G20. We will have at the Ministerial Conference on Women Empowerment in August 2022, one the issue that we want to be discussed is about mainstreaming the GETC principle in the decision making, budgeting and implementation in the 6th issue on policy notes, which discussed related in education, health, energy, environment, employment, and women in SME. And then policy options or recommendation for G20. We have 3 recommendations. First is to urge the G20 countries in every decision making on the development agenda, budgeting, and implementation to use the mainstreaming GETC. And then second is ensuring the G20 countries are committed to making the disability engagement group a part of the upcoming G20. And then third, the last is ensuring policies on the fulfillment of the right to decent work and economic recovery that promote leadership of women, people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups. And then the follow-up actions, informal meeting with W20 Empower and C20, and then involvement of C20 gender equality in the ministerial meeting of Ministry Women Affairs G20 last month. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. Now, next up is the Taxation and Sustainable Financing Working Group. And may I invite Ms. Vidya Dinkar, who's the international coordinator of this group.
Thank you all. Thank you, Arjun. So what was very positive about the dialogue yesterday is that we were listened to very, very carefully. And there was a detailed response on every point of ours, which was very heartening. Because as civil society, sometimes we get blocked, or sometimes we are just, oh, they're rambling something, we will do what we like. So we didn't see that. It was quite obvious that they were taking everything very seriously, and I congratulate the Indonesian presidency for that approach. When it came, so in fact, the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group confirmed about receiving and discussing the C20 policy recommendations with the co-chairs from US and China. That was also a welcome thing. And they have noted some of the recommendations they said, and it will be discussed, I think, in your next meetings and brought on board, hopefully. The IFA working group has the same position with C20 on priority issues and policy recommendations on debt, especially on encouraging G20 members to support low-income countries in tackling debt distress. However, of course, the global scenario and the current debt architecture is pretty challenging, and therefore it is a question of negotiation. One good thing that the G20 finance track suggested to us is to provide feedback to the OECD Inclusive Framework public consultation that is open for feedback until the end of August, until 19th August of 2022. So we shall attempt to do that definitely. There were many things that we discussed in great detail on taxation. Since Arjun has given me only 2 minutes, I'll just say short that we have pushed very, very strongly for the creation of a UN tax body where countries will vote on an equal footing. And this was well received yesterday, this idea of a UN tax body. We believe that that is the forum that can be democratic and can see, because, you know, even when it comes to digital tax, etc., which was also discussed yesterday, we know that suppose we decide to impose a digital tax or an equalization levy, sometimes the US has put trade sanctions, etc., and it hits at the heart of the sovereignty of countries to tax, you know, profits that multinational corporations or digital service providers are providing in our countries. So I will speed up. So the US tax convention is also something we are pushing for as proposed by the African finance ministers. We have pushed for a wealth tax, which was also discussed, a carbon tax, and we saw that the Sustainable Finance Working Group of the G20 provided a very neutral response. They neither agreed or disagreed. They took on board our recommendations, and we have said that we must develop a framework for transition finance and improving the credibilities of financial intermediaries.
Vidya? Yeah.
Yes,
If you can
and on
wrap
debt,
up, please.
I think there is concrete and daring actions by the G20 to encourage more serious discussion on debt architecture that we asked for, debt resolution and debt restructuring, creating debt relief beyond DSSI without undue burden and conditionalities, and issue a new SDR with rechanneling to help low and middle-income countries. Thank you, hopefully for a better world order and a better economic order, which is equitous.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you. Without much ado, next would be the education, digitalization, and civic space.
Thank you. My name is Gita Putri Damayana from the Civic Space Sub-Working Group. I am representing the Education, Digitalization, Civic Space Working Group. And from the education, unfortunately, their counterpart was not present during the public dialogue last night. And the education group will continue to pursue further engagement with the Ministry of Education as their counterpart. As for the digitalization sub-working group, we have our international member here, Mr. Parminder Singh, and our government counterpart last night, Mr. Bredipta, and Ikhwan Nasution from the Ministry of Communication and Information, both from the G20 working group. And their point was the inclusivity which was raised as a concern by the C20 have partly been addressed, particularly in the issue of digital skills and literacy, despite and still there is a lack of meaningful participation from vulnerable groups. And for the civic space sub-working groups, the absence of government counterparts makes it challenging for us to formally engage with state agency. However, we have Mr. Hidayat Yassin from the Ministry of Law and Human Rights and Commissioner Sandra Muniaga from the Indonesia Human Rights Commission. However, the challenge posed as a building block for future engagements with state agency for civic space working group in the next presidency. And as a closure for our call, the C20 Education, Digitalization, and Civic Space Working Group recognizes the importance of collective action and collaboration among civil society actors to build a sustainable future for all. The group will continue to raise our call to ensure access to quality education and educational continuity, which is conducted in a protected, expanded, and vibrant civic space with meaningful engagement of civil society to create an inclusive, fair, and responsive digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was quick, very quick. Yes. Can we have a hand for her, please? Thank you. The next up is Sustainable Development Goals and Humanitarian Working Group, Sayam Sul Ardhiana Sea. Please. Please, I would request if you can please clap for the gentlemen who are coming over here. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun, for this opportunity. Yesterday we have a very productive session. There are three counterparts attend our conversation from the Ministry of National Development Agencies, representing the Development Working Group, and then from the Ministry of Employment, representing the Employment Working Group, and also the representation from the Ministry of Finance. We have very productive discussion, starting by sharing our similar concerns about the setback of SDGs especially during this pandemic period. And after that, we also sharing our priority issues. We share our three priority issues. First is the addressing humanitarian financing gap. The second is advancing the social protection program, adaptive social protection, and also the third is the reductions remittance costs up to 3% as been meant by SDGs 10. And we are very happy that with almost our counterparts, we have a similar also concerns and also understandings. For example, in the context of with the Development Working Group, we have similar concern on adaptive social protection, focus on impact of disaster and also climate change. And with the Employment Working Group, we have also similar concern on how to address the people with disabilities as a part of inclusions. With the Ministry of Finance, we are also very happy that right now we are hearing that Indonesian government has initiating the country-based pool fund for disaster management, that it can be used as one of initiative to address the humanitarian financing gap, particularly for the disaster response. And however, Pak Edi and also others, college, we still have, I think, a challenge in the context of promoting the issue of remittance cost reductions, because it has not been clearly stated by employment working groups. And we are also hoping that this issue probably cannot be discussed in the context of Sherpa track, but it also should be discussed in the finance track, because it's, it is the issue that probably will have will be more if it is correct if we are talking in the finance track. Why we are asking that we need to be more focused on this issue, because it's not only about million people, Indonesians who has been the migrant workers around the world, but we are talking about the almost 87 million people who are displaced from many countries, seeking try to improve their livelihood, impacted by disasters, climate, and also conflict related, that their life is depend on remittance. We recommend that the issue of remittance cost reductions up to 3% can be our legacy for our presidencies to the next presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Samsul. The last we have the Anti-Corruption Working Group, Ferdian Yazid. Please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ferdian Yazid, representing the Anti-Corruption Working Group. Yesterday, we had a fruitful discussion with the representative from the Anti-Corruption Working Group G20. The G20 was represented by Mr. Roliansa Sumirat from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. The second one is Ms. Kartika Handaruningrum from Indonesian Anti-Corruption Commission. Both of them are representing the Anti-Corruption Working Group G20. As for the result, it was a positive result because many of our priority issues are aligned with their priority issues, but we have 5 priority issues that is regarding anti-money laundering and asset recovery. Both have similar interests. Beneficial ownership transparency, we have a similar interest with G20. Per contract issue, we also have similar interests. And regarding tackling corruption in the energy transition phase, we are also having a similar interest with them. Although they said that they don't have any focus regarding corporate transparency and integrity because they're working on it domestically, but as we know that Indonesian Anti-Corruption Commission is not satisfying anymore their work. As for our discussion, we both agreed that in this Indonesia presidency, it will be good if we are working together to push the regulation to regulate the professional enabler, such as Mossack Fonseca, which the data was uncovered by the investigative journalists during Panama Papers, Pandora Papers, etc. And we are also highlighted about beneficial ownership transparency because Indonesia is the only G20 countries that is not the member of Financial Action Task Force, and they are trying to be one of the member of Financial Action Task Force through the G20 meeting as well. As for the follow action between C20 agenda and G20 summit, they are saying that they need C20 support to keep advocating the importance of tackling corruption in the renewable energy sector because another country delegates, such as from China, they are rejecting the idea of countering corruption in the renewable energy sector. So the civil society must be strong to push this idea so that the idea could be carried out to the next G20 presidency. And also they are asking us to work closely with the G20 to introduce stronger measures regarding the legal professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That sums up the submissions from our working group. Now I'll invite our friend Mahfutan, the Sherpa of C20, to give his general overview on the recap of the C20.
Thank you, Arjun. Excellency Co-Sherpa of G20, Pak Edi, colleagues of C20 leaders and fellows coordinator of working group of C20, friends, participants, both online and in person here. Just to make a underlining of our process and to take an opportunity in front of our co-Sherpa of G20. Pak Edi, as you know, the process is already, and still we in the going process to continuing collaboration engagement with all working group in G20, both in finance track and in Sherpa track. So thank you so much for your encouraging and your assistance to all engagement group to engage directly with all working group. So it is really meaningful for us, and it is a very strong contribution to making sure that our G20 process more inclusive in all ways. So with the last remaining quarter of G20 Leader Summit, Pak Edi, in November, the C20 strongly encourage G20 leader to make intensively a dialogue and engage with all stakeholders, with all engagement group, not only with C20. We also get a strong message from other engagement group to pushing harder and harder to G20 to open the all possibility, the all opportunity to produce a concrete deliverable and strong commitment to address and provide so-called ambitious solution to the current multidimensional crisis. So we use the multidimensional approach to analyze, to develop the concrete recommendation that G20 will more so-called relevant to our current situation. So it's very important to tackling the people crisis on day-to-day basis. So if we are looking at the current situation, we're facing a huge crisis on food crisis in many countries, as the SDGs and humanitarian mentioned before. Hundreds million people affected directly on food crisis, inflation. So we call the G20 make some acceleration effort on humanitarian mission, on creating adaptive social protection for common people. Not only people live in a G20 member country, but also people in developing countries that are non-G20 member countries. So the second is about vaccine and health access, Pak Edi. As we know, the pandemics are still affecting in several countries, and the inequality on health services, on vaccine access still one of our obstacles globally. So not only access vaccine, but we should try to accelerate the transfer of vaccine production and technology. So we're quite happy on WTO agreement, but it is not necessary because only 5 years we can produce the vaccine in developing country. The third is in regard debt and taxation. Yes, a lot of low-income countries tackling debt distress is mentioned by our colleague in taxation and sustainable finance. So let's Indonesia take a lead how to make a strong negotiation on debt and strong negotiation on how we as a developing country calling the developed countries commitment on official development assistance and how to strengthen our agenda on domestic resource mobilization as well. So all the stressing issue can be one of our acceleration effort to answering the call of concrete deliverable and strong commitment. So it is important for the G20 process more reflect on this obstacle. Thank you so much, Arjun. Thank you, Co-Sherpa of G20 and all colleagues.
Thank you, Mafdang. Thank you. Now, Your Excellency, as we are gathered here, we want to hear your comments and response to all these presentations and asks.
Thank you, my dear friends, moderators. First of all, I just want to thank to all of you in here also and online for your enthusiastic and spirits to give us a recommendation. So I think this is a good way and as a new approach then how we have to make interactions between the governments and also with the civil society. Because as far as I know, and it is also a mandate from the Korean G20 presidency in 2010 that the governance of G20 needs to concur not only in inter-government bodies, but they also need to conquer civic society, businesses, and then academia, labor, and else. So that's why we have to have a representative of the civil society to give a recommendation, because based on the reference that I read from the very good books, the legitimacy of the G20 is depend on the civil society respond what the governments have made inside of the forum. So that's why we can make like a collaboration then how to create something in concrete. And of course, this is not to end until this year, but we can continue the discussion until the next presidency. So that's why the continuity of the topic is really important. Number two, the collaboration process. I really thank to all colleagues from the civil society, civil 20, because in the beginning, we try to make in our presidency G20 a collaboration not in every single working groups, but also in the engagement group. So that's we have a WhatsApp group and the engagement group. And it's good because when one of engagement group have a meeting, then they also invite another engagement group to come in and then also to share. So we can try to streamline the issues until in the main agenda of the G20. So we really focus then the context until in the end in the leaders' declaration based on every contribution for the different aspect, because we believe that every engagement group also have the different perspective. And the last, I think it's a good approach now when we already have a collaboration in the different perspective, but at the end, then you put me on this desk and just want to listen, right? So this is my job now, to listen to you, right? So I don't want to give a lot of comment because I believe your recommendation, your suggestion should be listened by the work stream of the G20. So that's why this is a good arrangement, because you invited many of the working groups and then also the other engagement group. And the end, we have to work together how then we can make this, your voice, into the leaders. Because my job and also my colleagues in the Sherpa office, we have to bring this to climb up the mountains until to the peak and give this to the leaders. But of course, we still have another challenges. So that's why I just want to wrap up, because I take notes, whatever you say, and then also recommend to me here. And I don't want to respond one by one, but I give you a big pictures now, So you can follow from my screen. So this is what we can wrap up the situation now in the G20. Yeah. So please next. So we understand, yeah, the G20 is a premier forum. So what the meaning of the premier? The premier means that we have to work in the very specific strategical issues that will happen now in the world, right? But if we only stuck on the only one issues, even we understand this is a very principal issues, but we need to discuss another issues that this is a challenging to the world. So that's why we have to combine the situation in the global situation. I have an analogy like it's too long and too many dust under the red carpet because we want to hide the dust with a very beautiful statement, for example. But someday, someone draw the carpet and we saw then the dust. The two options that we can clean up the dust, maybe vacuum cleaner is not effective anymore to clean up the dust, right? Because it's too many, it's too long, right? Another way, yeah, you put again the red carpet over the dust and no one knows anymore. But the other one, this is our homework. So we see then we have interlinked crisis now. maybe Pak WMP yesterday already shared to you the situation, right? The crisis interlinked. And it is very difficult because it's not only in the economic issues, but also in the social issues. So we understand in the end, if we do not recover this, what happened? The political turmoil. Indonesia has an experience with this. At the end, social unrest, right? In 1998, we have a trauma with this situation, and we do not hope it is happen in our friends' countries. Then we also have a structural issues. As I said, when we draw the carpet and the dust then suddenly appear, right? It's just like if the water lowers, and then what happened then? The problem, we solve the problem, right? And of course the risk. You said here is a lot of risk, trends of risk, from climates maybe, and also now from the war, and also from digital. Remember, digital transformation in one side is good, but the other side, we still have a homework with the digital divide. So it's a lot of homework that we have to be done. Then next, yeah, this is what we face now. Yeah, it's good, because we put the motto of recover together, recover stronger. Then we have a lot of multidimensional crisis. And of course, the next India, you have to be prepared with how then you have to think about this one, right? Because that will be happen. Yeah. Next. So, the G20 need to take the opportunity when the international system now is paralyzed with lack of anything. So take this forum to discuss, not only bring the problem, but bring the solution. Yeah, like that, like today, for example. Bring a lot of solution. Maybe you notice one problem, but bring 3 solutions. So then we can also, discuss the solution, which one the best. So in this case, maybe you can provide with 3 options with the current situation. 1, we let the divergence happen. Means, which one that you want to be in the block? Of course, there's a consequences, yeah? You will be in the left, or you will be in the right. So that's why our logo is gunungan, the mountains, in the puppet show. They will be in the middle, right? Not in the left, not in the right. So we have to create convergence. Otherwise, we just maintain the status quo. If the status quo win, then yeah, we know the war, but there is no way how to end the war, right? But maybe we can push from the civil society now, the civil 20 now, how to create the convergence. The convergence itself, we have to think about the global rule base. Mean, how to make this happen? Next. By what? Here you are. Use this dialogue. Because dialogue, you can create something, you can also share innovation, you can also share whatever you have, and then you try to make a balance with your partners. And at the end, maybe you can also initiate the structural transformations. Because we have to take a look many of things here, like environments, climates, whatever, and then the taxation is also part of the structural transformation. Because as far as I know, every country already have their own structures. And then you cannot make imbalance. So that's why we have to have how to make a balance in this case. You create transformation. You have to change because the world now is always change. The dynamic is so rapid. So you cannot just stay put with everything you have right now without any making like a change. Because you will be swept by the era. So in the end, we need to have an action, right? Next is just a little bit. Here you are, the G20 action, and I think it's good. I also learned from the C20 here. You create something like effective global cooperation. You listen from the working group. You listen from another engagement group, and then you discuss this as a part of the civil society concern about the topic and agenda in the G20, then you can also approach in the multidimensional way. You create something in very diverse perspective, and this is very good. Then, of course, at the end, looking forwards. Yeah, you can learn, right? When you drive the car, the mirror is always small, right? When you take a look back. Because the mirror in front of you is bigger, right? Because you have to drive in front, right? So that's why looking forward is very important. Mean that you create something very innovative. So this is the message from me. I just want to wrap up everything. I don't want to respond one by one because it's too many. But promise me I will take this as a notes, and I will also still open the gate for you until in the summit, and I believe this is part of like a complementary, yeah, in the leaders' declaration. Then in the annex we have a recommendation also from the civil society, from Civil 20, as a part of your voice, and I believe that you voice the voiceless, and then you also try to bring the message from the vulnerable groups. And in these parts, I also ask you to not only put them on the vulnerable groups, but let's make them as a productive group. For example, like disability, because inside of disability, they also have the advantage. They also have something maybe you do not know, right? So that's why in the Women 20 communique, we already put the disability, women with disability, and the employment working group, they already have a toolkits for disability, and also in energy transition, they also cover the disability. So in our presidency, in the Indonesian presidency, we want to bring disability as a part of the productive group, not anymore as a vulnerable group. So let's work for them, because they also have a chance, work together with us. So I still try to push a one session of disability meeting, maybe together with the ministerial meeting of the employment. So then the governors of disability around the world will have the first experience in the G20 meeting and also express what they want under the G20 and also to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It was a really insightful discussion, and I think we can all go with this promise that His Excellency has given to us of collaboration and continuity and bringing all different perspectives together under one banner. I think that is what G20 and C20 collaboration stands for. And as you may allow, sir, we will also open the floor for about 2 questions which can be addressed and possibly give a chance for the audience to interact. So if I can have any hands for questions. Any hands for questions? Maybe online? Do we have any hands on Zoom? Yeah, one more hand we need. That's any hands on the Zoom? Yeah, okay. Please introduce yourself.
Hello. Hello, my name is Baim from Madani Berkelanjutan, an environmental NGO. I am part of the environment, climate, and the no comment on that. Well, yeah, unfortunately, Eddie, we did not get to meet the G20 representatives yesterday. So my question is, do you think that the Indonesian presidency will take a lead on addressing the climate crisis in a way that is A, ambitious, and B, in a way that promotes justice with regard to the indigenous people and local communities, as well as other vulnerable communities. That's all.
We can take one more question and then Eddie can possibly respond later. Any other questions there? Yeah? Okay, yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the chance, and I'm Arsinta from the member of the Health, Global Health and Vaccine Access, and also from IACUM, Christian Foundation for Public Health NGO in Yogyakarta. I really appreciate the effort that government of Indonesia put to facilitate the engagement not only from the C20 or the CSO, but also from other engagement group. But looking at the process since March up to now, can you, Pak Edi, give us clarity and also assurance whether all the energy and also the recommendations from the C20 as well as the engagement, the input from the other engagement group will be significantly considered by the Indonesian government, because as our Sherpa said, Mas Maftu, we are committed to be part of the solutions, and also we are very committed to also bring a very concrete deliverables. And if you are listening to all the recommendations from the working group, there are some very concrete deliverables that we clearly would like to be considered by Indonesian government. For instance, the reductions of the remittance, the numbers is concrete, and it will help the Indonesian government to achieve the SDGs target, so that this is a question of clarity, because we still have a few months to go until November, and I hope the presence from the CSO is not only a matter of physical presentations, but also very respectful appreciations, but also a commitment to bring all the inputs onward for the betterment of this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the two questions. For the environments and the issues of climate crisis, as far as I know, I also noticed in issues also in the health working group and also in the agricultures and in environments, deputy meeting, climate sustainability working groups. Maybe it's not specifically they talk about the causes, because the causes is always too many. But we think about the consequences and how to tackle the consequences is. So that's why if you need maybe to communicate with this kind of the working group, I still can facilitate, and then we can also bring something for your recommendation maybe for the all working groups. So I will make sure that the chairs and the system of the working groups there, or the officials also can listen what your recommendation. But I believe they're still working on how to deal with this kind of the consequences as well, not only in the causes. All right, so number two, for the clarity, for the significant considered deliverable, this is depend on your solution. So mean that if you provide a very, very effective solution with the current situation, because we understand in the leaders' declaration structures, maybe as far as you know, yeah, from the 2008, when you follow, is around more than 800 commitments from the leaders' declaration. If you take a look, sometimes from the commitment is still relevant with the current situation, right? For example, in the financial system, like the debt distress, for example, the debt distress now is not happen suddenly, right? It's long time process. And we remember in 2011, in the French presidency, they already put how to strengthen the financial system at that time. And then they also launched the FSB. And they assign the IMF with the surveillance system. So then we can maybe we ask them, so where the system is, why then the debt distress is still happen? So we just remind based on many of the commitments already made from the previous presidency. So that's why in our presidency now we try to take the practical action, or we call the concrete deliverable as a part of the tangible results. Because G20 is not only result the statement, but at the end we need to have a we have an example for people to understand. Because if you put a very long statement in the leaders' declaration, but at the end no one knows what the meaning of the statement is, only a story, then 1 week after the summit, everyone is forget anything, right?
Yeah.
So that's why better that we have a very concise in the political will statement, but we put many things into the annex. So annex is a part of the leaders' declaration. It's a part of the commitment from the G20 members and also around the world, so we can bring the benefits for all as a principle of the G20. So please make it very practical in the short term and also medium terms, long terms, because not every country in the world just expect us. How then we can create something innovative, effective, productive solution with the current multidimensional crisis. Otherwise, they just think, oh, this is only the elites club. They talk, and then they also take some vacation inside of the meeting, and else. So that's why we have to bring something, then bring also an example to around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. It was indeed a pleasure. And, yeah. Sorry? Yeah, I think, no, well, we only had questions for 2. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you want? One question if we can take online from Zoom. I think, if anybody can raise their hands. Nope, I don't think so. Anybody has a question. Okay, thank you. So, Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining this very enlightening session. And I hope that we would be able to come out with some concrete solutions and some collaboration when the presidency and the summit takes place. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this.
And that will be your homework.
Yes, that will be next for us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
So ladies and gentlemen, can once again we give a big round of applause for the speakers and Mr. Arjun Philippas, the moderator. Thank you so much. And of course, right now, I know and I'm sure that you guys can resist having more burning question or opinions. And however, we need to warp about in a few minutes. And of course, right now, I would like to pass the moment to distinguished C20 Sherpa, Mrs. Risnawati Utami Richard, to have her closing remarks. So ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mrs. Risnawati Utami Richard, please.
Good evening, selamat sore, Excellency Mr. Edi Priyo Pambudi, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the end of the dialogue. We finally are coming to the end, but of course this is not the end of the dialogue for sure. when we talk about the G20, and this is ongoing commitment and also require the leaderships of all of the G20 member of states to, I hope that they can adopt the recommendation that all of the G20 has been participated very actively yesterday, and we have a very productive dialogue on how to talk about the issues, complexity of the global crisis at the moment. And I have to say that all of us have to work together, as Mr. Edi Pambudi already mentioned. It requires a collective collaborations. And I have to quote from the United Nations Charter about international cooperations that actually is coming from the concept of the human rights, international human rights law that has to be implemented globally. And also the other thing that is important is the meaningful participations of civil society organizations. And this is also mentioned boldly in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, that meaningful and effective participations of all civil society organizations, including people with disability organization, is the heart of the conventions. That means that this is really legally binding for all of the countries that ratify or as a signatory of the UN conventions. So this is kind of reminders that I would like to raise to all of the G20 members and also the C20 Indonesia that has been very active to give a concrete contribution and recommendations during the Indonesia presidency until the next transition of the India presidency. Also, the other important point that I would like to quote from the President of India in 2013, President Pranab Mukherjee. He said that inclusive growth should not be a mere slogan, but a fundamental driving force for sustainable development. So I think this is a very strong commitment that the President of India mentioned about how we have to work together in terms of implementing inclusive international cooperations, because this is not just a commitment, but when we analyze into the more broad context of international human rights law, this is a legally binding that has to be implemented. All of the leaders, not just the G20, but around the world. And as South Sherpa C20 Indonesia, I really would like to express gratitude for the Indonesia presidency of G20, because the presidency leadership put a lot of attention in terms of involving the vulnerable groups, including people with disabilities and women's group and other civil society organization, to basically create a concrete recommendation and also have a mutual dialogue. And this is very important, to have a mutual dialogue for all of us to understand the multiple complexity of the crisis in the world at the moment. And the other aspect that I would like to raise in this closing remark is the legacy of the Indonesia presidency is critically important to be continued to other presidency of India, for example, and beyond. The first thing is how to embrace the human rights-based approach. So the G20 commitment and recommendation is not just business as usual, but it has to be adopted, the human rights-based approach, when focuses on people, the people as the first, because they are impacting what the policies has been created by all of the global leaders. And the worst impact that has been faced must be the vulnerable group, because of the, I have to say, the policy that are not inclusive, the policy that are not benefit for all people. And I think that it's time for us to include all of the people and make the commitment and political will to be implemented on the ground, but has to be adopted, the human rights-based approach. And again, inclusive international cooperation is critically important to be implemented, because we now have a discourse or discussion within the United Nations forum regarding the international cooperations. And as part of the committee within the CRPD, I have to mention also how we discuss about the importance of international cooperations and how to be more inclusive. And within the committee or the UN treaty bodies, they mention about how important all of the governments in many forums, including the G20, they have to create the timeline, the budget marker, and how to benefit the policies of international cooperation is to be more inclusive and accessible and of course sustainable in order to address the global crisis in the world. And I think that it's time for Indonesia to create more good practice and then to have this legacy and to be continued this legacy to other countries, to create more inclusive fiscal policy, for example, also to make inclusive public procurement, I have to say, because this is also part of the important aspect in terms of the economic growth, how to make the country can have a better and inclusive economic growth. I thank you.
So once again, thank you so much, and please, Mrs. Risnawati Utami, to stay at the stage because after this, we're gonna have a photo session. So I would like to invite to come and join us to the stage for all the VIP and of course the C20 working coordinators. Please join us to the stage to take a photo session, all right? Once again, for all the VIP members and of course the C20 Working Group Coordinator, please come and join us to the stage to take a photo session with us. And of course, before we have a Paris conference after this. Silakan Bapak Ibu langsung saja. Dan setelah ini kita akan bersama-sama mengadakan dan juga mendengarkan press conference. Jadi mungkin Ibu Risna silahkan tetap di sini saja ya, karena Ibu juga akan menjadi bagian dari press conference ya. Once again, would like to invite for all the VIPs and of course the C20 Working Group Coordinators. Once again, C20 Working Group Coordinators to come and join us to the stage and listen to the photographer. Which one is the best place? And of course, don't forget to maybe put out your masks for a while and prepare your best smile for ya oke, nggak masalah ya, kanan kiri sudah imbang. Teman-teman fotografer mungkin bisa diarahkan kanan kirinya. Udah, Bapak Ibu silakan agak ke kanan kita sedikit. Agak, berpindah ke kanan, betul? Oke. Maybe move forward to our right, 1 or 2 step please. Moving forward to right, is it okay? All right, can you put out the mask for a while? Maskernya boleh dibuka sebentar, silahkan. We will take a picture in 3, 2, 1, cheers. Another pose, 3, 2, 1. And right now it's time for giving the C20 symbol. With the right hand, make a C statement for C20 and G20. 1, 2, 3, everybody say cheers. All right, thank you so much. And of course, once again, thank you for all the VIPs, all the participants offline and online, and of course, the C20 Working Group Coordinating. And of course, right now, we are arriving at the final moment of the C20 Policy Dialogue, and now we are going to have a press conference moderated by the C20 Steering Committee, Mrs. Maria Lauranti. So ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the press conference and of course, Mrs. Maria Lauranti.
Teman-teman media boleh agak maju ke depan.